Howdy, friends. Welcome to episode 8 of Wild Curiosity, the podcast where we explore the things that spark our curiosity, especially those that unfold in the wild. I'm your host, Mandolin, and I was just thinking what better time than winter to tell you all a chilling tale. But first, how is everybody? Did you have a good holiday season, break, or whatever? I hope so. I had a great break from school, which was so nice after last quarter, which was tough. Jeff and I went to Belize for a week and then we spent a few days in Sun Valley. So it was really cool being on the beach in the Caribbean water and then a week later being in a crazy blizzard. So it's really fun. Now, winter quarter just started Monday and I am back at it. I'm only taking 2 classes this quarter, which is nice. But, anyways, let's get into today's episode. In honor of wintertime, aka avalanche season, I thought I would tell you a story about the most deadly Avi to grace America. Kidding, because there really is nothing graceful about this story. Not only was it the deadliest avalanche in history to date, it also happened in my backyard. Well, okay, not actually, but the avalanche took place about 2.5 hours from me on Highway 2 at Stevens Pass in Washington State. Following one of the worst blizzards this area of the Cascades had ever seen. During the early morning hours of March 1st, 1910, an avalanche roared down Windy Mountain near Stevens Pass in the Cascade Mountains, taking with it two Great Northern trains and 96 victims. This is one of the worst train disasters in U.S. history and the worst natural disaster with the greatest number of fatalities in Washington state. Our story begins on February 23rd, 1910, after a snow delay at the East Cascade mountain town of Leavenworth. Two Great Northern trains, the Spokane Local Passenger Train number 25 and the Fast Mail Train number 27, proceeded westbound toward the Puget Sound. The trains had emerged from the Cascade Tunnel, traveling from the east to the west side of the mountains when heavy snow and avalanches, often known as Cascade cement, blocked the tracks. This forced them to stop near the small town of Wellington, a community made up of mostly Great Northern Railway employees. The area was in the throes of a severe blizzard. Up to a foot of snow accumulated every hour, and on the worst day, 11 feet of snow fell. Holy shit, that is so much snow, right? Okay, so to give you a better picture, these trains had made it through the Cascade Mountains, so over Stevens Pass, but then they were stopped right as they came out of the tunnel. So they're basically stopped at the top of Stevens Pass, where obviously the weather's going to be the worst, and they couldn't go anywhere because of avalanches in front of and now behind them. The trains were stopped under the peak of Windy Mountain above Tie Creek. The heavy snowfall and avalanches made it impossible for train crews to clear the tracks. Snowplows were present at Wellington and others were sent to help, but they could not penetrate the snow accumulations and repeated avalanches along the stretch of tracks between Wellington and Leavenworth, not even able to reach the town. So, for 6 days, the trains waited in blizzard and avalanche conditions. On February 26th, the telegraph lines went down, and the communication with the outside was lost. Then, late on February 28th, the snow stopped and was replaced by rain and warm wind. Just after 1 a.m. on March 1st, as a result of a lightning strike, a slab of snow broke loose from the side of Windy Mountain during the thunderstorm. A 10-foot high mass of snow, half a mile long and a quarter-mile wide, fell toward the town. A forest fire had recently ravaged the slopes above, leaving very little to impede the avalanche. Somehow, the avalanche missed the Baylitz Hotel, which is the only hotel in town that also housed the town's general store and their post office, but hit the railroad depot. Most of the passengers and crew were asleep aboard their trains. The impact threw the trains 150 feet down and into the Ty River Valley. Charles Andrews, a Great Northern employee, was walking toward the warmth of one of the Wellington's bunkhouses when he heard a rumble. He turned toward the sound and recounted white death moving down the mountainside above the trains. Relentlessly it advanced, exploding, roaring, rumbling, grinding, snapping, a crescendo of sound that might have been the crashing of 10,000 freight trains. Picked up cars and equipment as though they were snow-draped toys and swallowing them up, disappearing like a white, broad monster into the ravine below. Charles Andrews would not make it to the bunkhouse warmth for many hours. Along with other Wellington residents, Andrews rushed to the crushed trains that lay 150 feet below the railroad tracks. During the next few hours, they dug out survivors, many with injuries. In all, there were only 23 survivors that were pulled alive from the mangled wreckage, describing scenes of horror as they were tossed around inside the tumbling train cars. In the following days, word spread to nearby towns, and more volunteers arrived to assist, including famed Northwest photographer Ashel Curtis, the most prominent Seattle photographer of the early 20th century, as well as a noted outdoorsman. Which, side note, really quick, if you are from Washington or have traveled east along I-90 over Snoqualmie Pass, then you've probably seen one of the exit signs. I don't know which off the top of my head, but it says the name of this guy, Ashel Curtis, and me being the grandpa I am, I of course had to research that one day because I didn't even know what that meant. It turned out to be the name of this dude who, during that era, was like the man as far as Northwest photography goes. He was part of the Mountaineers and was responsible for a lot of early mountain recreation photos on Mount Rainier and a lot of other famous Northwest photos. I definitely want to do a episode on him at some point. If you would like that, let me know. I'll post some of the photos he took of the Wellington Avalanche on Instagram and Facebook. Okay, so back to the story. Those who did not survive were carefully wrapped and placed on toboggans tied together with long ropes to be taken down the mountain for identification and burial. Ashel Curtis captured a number of images of volunteers tasked with the somber duty, many of which can be found in the University of Washington's special collections and the Library of Congress. Recovery crews dragged the bodies for miles until they could be hoisted down a slope to the nearby town of Scenic. The gruesome task included tying a rope to the victim's feet, then lowering the bodies headfirst, before reaching the recovery train. Unfortunately, the work was then abandoned because of the adverse weather conditions, and it was not until 21 weeks later, in late July, that the last of the bodies were retrieved. Newspapers began sensationally referring to the area as Death Hill. Only one of the 9 crewmen on the fast mail train survived. 19-year-old Alfred Hensel fell asleep on the opposite end of the car from his coworkers when the avalanche hit. It split their car in half, and the other 8 men were swept away in the fray. The injured were sent to Wenatchee. The bodies of the dead were transported to trains that carried them to Everett and Seattle. 96 people died in the avalanche, including 35 passengers, 58 railroad employees sleeping on the trains, and 3 railroad employees sleeping in cabins that were enveloped by the avalanche. The immediate cause of the slide was the rain and thunder, but conditions had been set by the clear cutting of timber and by forest fires caused by steam locomotive sparks, which opened up the slopes above the tracks and created an ideal environment for slides to occur. It took the Great Northern 3 weeks to repair the tracks before trains started running again over Stevens Pass, and the company invested millions to build a snow shed at the disaster site, hoping to spare lives in potential future avalanches. Wellington was renamed Ty by the Great Northern in the hopes of removing any bad associations from the area, but it wasn't enough to save the community. The new Cascade Tunnel opened in 1929, bypassing Wellington altogether. Today, all that remains is a crumbling snow shed lined with hundreds of rotten railroad ties and the old Cascade Tunnel at the site of America's deadliest avalanche. Also, to prevent the recurrence of such tragic events, the Great Northern Railway stopped producing wooden train cars and replaced them with large riveted steel cars. I'm sorry. When I first read this, I was like, huh? Bro, what? They were made of wood. Like, the cars were made of wood. I don't know. if I ever knew that, or maybe I did. I don't know, but that just sounds like, of course, if there's an avalanche, everyone's gonna die. I literally couldn't believe that, but makes more sense why there was such immense loss. So today, the old road grade is now known as the Iron Goat Trail, a 6-mile round trip hiking trail through the forest and past various examples of railroad archaeology that follows the abandoned route of the Great Northern Railway. The name Iron Goat was taken from the Great Northern Railway corporate symbol, a mountain goat standing on a rock. And the title Iron Goat was applied to Great Northern locomotives working the mountainous rail lines in the Rockies and the Cascades, which I thought was a cool detail. Known for its historical significance and scenic beauty, the trail features remnants of early 20th century railway structures, including tunnels, snow sheds, and artifacts. Interpretive signs along the trail recount the area's history, including the 1910 Wellington Avalanche disaster. With gentle grades and multiple trailheads, including the Martin Creek and Wellington trailheads, it offers options for hikers of all abilities, including ADA accessible sections. The trail is best explored from late spring through fall, and a Northwest Forest Pass is required for parking. Obviously, when we have a site like this that had such a devastating disaster that happened there, you can't really mention the site without talking about ghosts. So, visitors have reported eerie experiences along the trail, including hearing phantom train whistles, feeling sudden cold spots, or seeing shadowy figures near the snow sheds and tunnels. These tales add a chilling layer of intrigue to an already fascinating hike, blending history with whispers of the paranormal. I myself have actually had a couple run ins with the old Iron Goat out there on the trail or at the Iron Goat Trail. I actually did hike this trail a long time ago with my friends Olivia and Laura. Man, it was such a long time ago. I didn't know anything about it. It was just like early hiking season, I remember. So we were trying to find one and we didn't know how far away it was at the time. I mean, this has to be over 10 years ago. And so my friend Olivia had class at like 4 and we ended up leaving and then driving there. We're super deep, like in traffic forever. We finally get to the trailhead and we're like, yeah, Olivia, you're not going to class today. I am actually hoping to have Olivia on an episode soon. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a good one, but I'll see if she wants to go again because I want to go back. Whoa, you guys. I just looked back at my photos, and the last time I did the Iron Goat Trail was March 9th, 2015, 10 years ago. So, dude, wow. Whew, that's super wild. But what is even wilder about it is that that date, March 9th, is only 8 days after the anniversary of the avalanche, which at the time I had no clue about before doing this trail. So, crazy. I, might post some of the pics from that day on Instagram. It's nuts to see the difference in photo quality on the iPhone just from 2015 to 2025, but I guess that is a decade. Okay, and then the other time that I was at the Iron Goat Trail was in June 2020 when the world was shut down. Jeff and I decided to drive the Cascade Loop for my birthday in our old Narvan. Which I looked up a description for an easier explanation of the Cascade Loop if you don't know. The Cascade Loop is a 440-mile scenic driving route that showcases some of Washington state's most breathtaking landscapes, connecting the Puget Sound, the Cascade Mountains, and the eastern high desert. It's often referred to as Washington's ultimate road trip due to its diverse scenery and wealth of outdoor activities along the way. So, anyway, we were barely on the first leg of this loop, which goes over Stevens Pass, and we decided to pull off right below, like, the top of the pass to let Hank go pee. We pull off on this little road called the Old Cascade Highway and let him out. Everything is great. We're stoked to see some mountains finally after a long winter inside and, the pandemic, blah, 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 blah. And so we hop back in, all stoked and ready for adventure, and nothing. The van won't start. It was literally everything was literally perfect until we stopped on this freaking road, and then all of a sudden, we're broken down. While we waited for rescue, I looked on my phone at the surrounding area on maps, and that's when I realized we randomly had turned on the road that takes you to the Iron Goat Trail and the scene where almost 100 people died. That was it for me. I was like, "No way. We need to be rescued because I didn't wanna linger or stay overnight." Because honestly, it's really not that big of a deal being broken down in a van, obviously, because we used it for camping and all of our outdoor recreation stuff. We could just sleep in our van and everything, so we weren't worried. But I wasn't gonna stay the night with all that potential ghost activity, you know? Who's with me? Would you wanna stay there? Probably not. But long story short, my B-day kinda sucked that year, and we had to pay a ton to tow the van to the nearest town to a shop, and thankfully, my angel in-laws came and picked us up. Thank you, Modo, for saving us from the ghosts. I didn't necessarily feel any, like, ghostly presence either of the times that I can remember, although the van breaking down on the road to the trailhead is kind of a creepy coincidence. What do you guys think? But yeah, I'll definitely be revisiting the trail, hopefully this year, maybe with a Ouija board. See what kind of things I can conjure up. Kidding. But you guys should check it out too and let me know if you do and what you think and if you get haunted by any ghosts. But no, in all seriousness, I think it's an important, although tragic part of our history, and I'm excited to go there again with a new and more informed perspective. Well, guys, with that, thanks again for hanging with me today. If you'd please follow Wild Curiosity on Instagram and Facebook and tell your friends, I would really appreciate that. Follow me wherever you listen: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, all of the above. Suggestions and comments are encouraged and really appreciated. Hit me up on socials or shoot me an email, wildcuriositypodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and I will be back in 2 weeks with another episode. In the meantime, remember to stay curious and explore the wilds. And also check the avalanche report, please. I think like 90% of avalanches happen on moderate days, so check your Avi report, please. Okay, love you. Bye.